Hi everyone, I'm Nathaniel Adewole. I'm a threat researcher. In my previous role, I helped various organizations across different sectors to secure their digital assets. I will be presenting on the topic that says endpoint security, a stealthy approach to cyber defense. The research methodology I used was basically practical review of endpoint security solution across various SOC. And also, I also review related work, 50 in total from year 2000 to July 2021. And lastly, I carry out a survey from I targeted practitioners that are actually practicing security. And the objective of this presentation, first objective is to practically to review the challenges of endpoint security based on the three pillars of security: the people, the process, and the technology. And this presentation will also outline the expectation that is to maintain balance between security and productivities. And lastly, it start as a guide to policymaker, decision implementer, and also stakeholders across various sectors as to know the minimum yardstick to for a better endpoint security when they are choosing endpoint security. A statistics was taken by Cynic previously, and this statistics shows that students and tutors, faculty members, they actually engage in YouTube videos and massive online resource. Internet addict, they spend more time on application. Socializers use social medias, and there are some presenter like me that they write blog, they write technical content, they push content out there. There are businessmen that they track stocks, travelings and news related to e-commerce, and they are gamers. So one thing that is peculiar, one thing that is similar to one thing that is a plain truth is almost everyone will fall into one of these category. I guess almost everyone will fall into one of this category. So one thing is most of these categories, they all speaks to the endpoint. Everybody use the endpoint. Either you're a gamer, either you are a presenter. Just speak to the endpoint. So what's the idea of the endpoint? The idea of the endpoint initially is that is the workstation in the PC. But nowadays it has transpired into IoT. With the era of IoT, we have servers, we have Internet of Things, we have smart devices, we have smart gadgets, we have mobile phones. And nowadays, now a URL in an API or an EC2 instance, if you span an instance in your cloud workload, is still an endpoint, which interacts with the server resources. So endpoint is fast paced all around. Almost everything is endpoint. So why endpoints? So based on the statistics we've shown here, statistics relating to bridges, statistics relating to the cost of a breach, global cost of a breach per day, statistics relating to how breach are detected and who actually confirm that an attack or an organization has been breached. Is it the third party? Is it the blue teams? Is it the attacker itself? The sample, the count of new strains of malware per day globally, as it is shown on the screen, is 560,000 per day, according to Dataprot. Also, IBM also shows that it takes 228 days to actually dictate a threat, to actually dictate a breach, and 80 days on an average to actually contain it. So another reason why we are focusing on the endpoint is most of these attack can be categorized. Most of these devices, most of these internet usage can be categorized broadly under either it is host based, either it is application based. So most are mobile app, web app, everything is either based on the server, either web server, database, host based. So, and everything is point to the endpoint. So endpoint is very important. Endpoint is very important. That's why we're studying endpoint security. So A brief history. Over time, it all started with Creeper One by Bob Thomas. He was trying to experiment, and he wrote is a very benign program that will just display I am a creeper. Catch me if you can. The ELK cloner also follow suit. They are very benign, and it's the intent is not to actually wreak an havoc. The intent is just either to play pranks, practical pranks on friend or private experimental research. Then later it moved to Jerusalem. It's moved to a more harmful attack, which is Jerusalem, Morris, and the likes. So notable among them is Melissa. Melissa will send an email. A Melissa one will send an email, and once you open it, it will hijack your server and to now span and send 50 emails to replicate itself. It will spread 50 emails to each of your connection, each of your contact list. So it's becoming more benign. It's becoming more harmful. Then towards 2011 to date, we have the era of various APTs and various more sophisticated malicious attack, extremely malicious attack. That's when we have Ryung ransomware, we have WannaCry, we have Mirai botnet, very very rampant around 2019, 2020. We have Flame, we have CryptoLockers and various other ransomware attacks. Then attacks. One thing about most of these attacks are the attacks are smart. I focus on the attacks now, not the attacker itself. So by the attacks, I mean both malware and both the attack vector, the attack part. So when you analyze most of these attack, when you try to analyze them, you discover there are some evasive mechanisms that are actually put in place, which suggest that they're actually very smart. We have Packer code, we have polymorphic code. Most of this is to bypass the detection algorithm, the underlying detection logic. Now, the concept, the algorithm for most of these, most of the malware is very simple. If there are indicators that suggest that I'm in a sandbox or I'm being analyzed, I'm in an analyzing environment, suspend actions, pretend, exit, kill processes. If there is no indicator like that to suggest that, then execute my malicious payload. I just dubbed this. As so signature bypass. Those are the methods that there are several methods that are automated to bypass the signature detection algorithm. Also, for the behavioral analytics, there are methods to bypass the sandbox analysis, which are logic bomb. Logic bomb speak to the fact that a malware is crafted to execute at a specified later date and time. Stalling code, as I've indicated, the stalling code, we first execute a non-malicious, irrelevant code to actually escape that analysis period. Then later, before you now started executing the malicious code itself. Extended sleep. Extended sleep speaks to you actually, the malware actually pretending, not executing itself. Probably it might sleep for like a day, it might sleep for several hours before it actually now executes. Now, user interactions speaks to the fact that malware tends to check for mouse click, malware tends to check for last access file, malware tends to check for the host configuration system. So system properties like username, is that sample in the bus, or is that malware sample? You say to scan. And most of this can be achieved with these window utilities we make. You can list the user, you can list the host properties, you can list the MAC address, you can list several properties that relate to the host, the printer name, the name that you use to name if there is something that's related to VM or virtual technology. So among one of the most notable malware sample is Cabana and Black Squid. Those malware are very steady in the sense that they actually scan the environment. They have environmental awareness property mechanism to actually dictate that I'm actually in a sandbox. Going further, a step further, from our analysis so far, we've discovered that what has actually changed is there is an increasing level of sophistication in this malware sample. So that speaks to the A in APT, the advanced, there's an advancement. And also there is in terms of scale, there is an increasing count in terms of scale. And also the attack types started from physical program that file program to something that actually leverage on the integrity of running processes that you don't actually need to, that run in the memory, probably malicious PowerShell script, WMI macros that run in embedded office, that is embedded into office suites and similar stuff like that. More dangerous threat actors' motivations started from benign motivation of just trying to experiment or just trying to play pranks on your friend to something that is more diversified, something that is more dangerous. So also, threat actors started from researchers that have said to APT group, and these are some of the APT group over time. So there's also a trend in anti-malware products. There's a trend in anti-malware products it all started from antivirus. Initially, endpoint security revolved around just antivirus. Once you have your antivirus set, that's the end of endpoint security. But over time, threat actors has learned how to bypass most of these antivirus automatically. And also one thing is antivirus is virus focused. So it used signature in the detection engine. Later it improved over time to using heuristics. Like it's trying to compare the source code to create a cluster of a variant, a family of malware. Then later we move to EPP, which is prevention focus. It also has anti-exploit properties and app control. But one thing that is like a baseline to both of these detection mechanism is they only detect known signature. They only detect known threats. And known can vary from vendor. It's possible one vendor has detected this and this vendor has not actually updated his detection engine. Or probably the vendor has actually updated it. They knew about this, but the end user, the blue team, are not actually pulling the updates for this signature. So that's another challenge. Then also later we move to EDR, which focus on the detection and also XDR. XDR try to combine EDR, NTA, and wider visibility. Going forward, this review is based on 3 pillars of attack, which is the people, process, and technology. Okay. So for the endpoint solution technology, these are the products that help to protect the systems. So one of the first checkbox is at the deployment stage. So at the deployment stage, one of the issues that has been encountered over time is complexity in deployment. So by complexity in deployment, you are having issue, analysts or security engineer have issues with compatibility in deployment with existing tools. So I want to deploy an EDR and there is window defender default on that endpoint and is actually in contrast, it's actually inhibiting my deployment or is actually working against each other so that it's now affecting system resources, or probably agent is not supported, or probably there's difference in architecture. The architecture is only the only deployment that is available is probably for Mac. There's no Windows, there's no Linux, or probably is only on cloud, there's no cloud support. The installation requirement is also resource intensive in terms of compute memory, the number of storage that's required. So most of these things actually pose a challenge. So the next checkbox is use case implementation. One beauty about organization is there are different sectors. One sector is the health sector is different from the fintech, from NGO, from government parascaters. So most of them also have, and there are different needs for most of these NGOs. Another thing is capability and flexibility of assigning reputations. So if you want to implement blacklist based on your use cases, is it flexible enough to blacklist IP, blacklist by IP, or whitelist by file paths, or blacklist by other IOCs? So it should not be very rigid. It should be able to meet up with the customer's customization requirements. So the API should also be very interactive and simple. Excellent documentation should there should be support for this. So the next on my checkbox is security activities impact on system resources. Oftentimes, anti-malware products, endpoint solution, XDR, EDR, they tend to take enormous system resources when they are trying to scan, or when probably configuration is implemented by an analyst, or sometimes when you have to query some syntax, when you have to run some queries, probably during threat hunting. And this actually make the system to hang, and it leave endpoint users with only one choice, and that's to disable the endpoint solutions. So most of the time, users prefer confidence, and sometimes they have to trade security for their confidence. So what's expected is it should be less resource intensive. It should not be taking much of system resources. Then the next checkbox is useful framework should be integrated into the EDR. So most of the challenges we observe over time is questions and justification for each of the mitigation step, each of the remediation that is recommended. There's and also most of these solutions emphasize much on the attack stages sometimes, and they don't give an in-depth overview of the threat itself. So what is expected is there should be a simple interpretable model for analysts, so the analysts can leverage on this in their decision logic, or in when they are doing their investigation to clients, or probably when they are presenting evidence at the court of law, and they can actually leverage and reference most of this model. Some of the popular model is the cyber kill chain, which is trying to map each of the attacks to the stages in the from the foothold, from the point where the attacker gets a foothold into the environment to the point where it actually exfiltrate data. So another thing that's similar is MITRE attack framework. MITRE attack framework actually speaks to the techniques and the tactics, the procedures. By tactics, I mean the why. It answer the why, and the techniques and procedures speaks to how it actually achieved that, how it actually achieved the processes. So one recent framework is the unified keychain. We try to merge both the cyber keychain and the MITRE attack together. Then another checkbox is the integrated threat intelligence. So oftentimes vendors take too long to release new updates, new signature. Also, there's an enormous number of malware sample that is released that is not in sync with the solution, with this anti-malware product. This leaves the solution, the anti-malware product, with two options, and that's false negative and false positive. False negative in the sense that since the EDR solution or XDR is not updated, then it will not actually detect anything. If you see some things false negative, you see things that are actually malicious as benign, it will not pick it up. And also accuracy, that's false positive, accuracy of what is actually being detected. So what is expected is the combination of threat intelligence and inbuilt correlation rule will enable these solutions to dictate in real-time analysis, updated detection algorithm model. So it also facilitates response. Response time will also be facilitated. So it's very crucial. Threat intelligence is very crucial in most of these endpoint solutions. The automatic response capability, automation capability. You should be able to automate some stuff. So automation in terms of response, automation in terms of tasks or low-level activities. Some of these are end user might want to schedule updates. They might want to schedule scan. Most of these use cases are very important. And also, there are some low-level activities that will actually weigh down, that will actually overwhelm the analysts, the blue teams. So, auto prevention of malware. If there is a consolidated playbook which has been created, which has been designed into most of the anti-malware products, it will go a long way in automatic response. So automation is very important. Automation is very important to facilitate response. So another thing is visualization. So graphical view. Uh, one major challenge around this is there is short investigation period relative. The ratio of investigation to resolution, what is expected based on the SLA metrics, based on the agreement, and based on the best practices is very short. There's a short period to actually investigate. The aim is to resolve. So you don't spend more time at the investigation page. But there are enormous data that has to be reviewed to make sense out of this event, out of this alarm. So what another thing is there's no aggregated view of incidents. It's not like incidents are just one single map, one single line that you can actually observe in a JFE and actually predict that this is actually what is happening with all accuracy. So in when you are trying to validate alarms, it will go a long way if there's a contextual view where there's an holistic view of the whole environment, of the whole incidents, which can be achieved with a graphical illustration. So instead of too much details, too much write-up, too much text in this solution, there should be a relationship between correlated events which can be represented with a workflow, and also which is also showing the attack path. So some of these IOC are extent of the present extent, how long has the attacker dwell locked in your environment, what are their attack stage, what are the paths, what are the C2 metadata, IPs and the likes, what are the data access. So most of these things you can actually associate it with a graphical workflow. You can actually make sense of many alarms, and the response time will be improved. So log retention policy. So I would like to emphasize on the P in APT. So which speak to persistence. By persistence speaks to two things basically, or three. The first one is the attackers are not giving up in their intrusion attempt, and also the threat actor, they tend to keep a long profile. They tend to keep a low profile in your environment for a long period of time. And once they even compromise any of the hosts, we tend to have a prolonged control of that host. So some might span in your environment for months, some might lock in your environment for years. Then most of the attack that have been discovered has been like they have been in the environment for 6 months, 1 year. And but the challenge on the part of analysts is before analysts complete or finish the investigation, the log have been poached. So you have EDR, you have XDR that actually keep logs for, based on my review, actually keep log for 7 days, some for 14 days, some for 30 days. So these are very small compared to the persistent level of APT. And what is expected basically is there should be the capability to retain log based on users' demand. This can now be linked to a subscription plan. Like, okay, the default is, assuming the default is 7 days, but there is an upgradable, there's a plan which I know will have a cost implication that, okay, if you tend to keep your log for a year or 2 years, there's a plan for you. You just have to upgrade to this subscription plan. It's the capability that we are speaking about now. So it can be there can be a plan for that. It can be segregated into different plans. And this log also should be queryable. You should be able to query it and reference it as need demand, as the occasion demands. Then enhanced threat hunting. One of the challenges, evasive threats in the environment still try to bypass some security control. So there is this demand on analysts, on blue teams, to actually dive into the environment and do their investigation thoroughly. But the challenge is the data are very rigid. The data has been structured already, so you cannot actually query and interact with it. You cannot actually play around with the data, so it's very complex. It's also not robust enough. So what is expected is there should be access to large data sets large unfiltered data set, and easy to query. Feasibility to endpoint end. Once you have feasibility to endpoint end, I mean the compute, the number of CPU, the storage, the memory, that's the RAM size, the properties of the device like batteries and the likes. So from there you can actually envisage once you can actually know the number. So once you know the number, it will be very easy to actually fault evil or cite evil. To actually fault evil. So for example, a crypto miners will leverage on we actually exploit, we actually use your system resources. So once you discover that okay, this system is actually the compute level is actually dropping, or the usage is actually very high, you can make some inference from there. And another very important part is that the feasibility of the end into the endpoints edge will also give an insight into outdated program, like outdated system program and application program, where you can now engage with virtual patching or adversary reports. So advanced threat detection. So the challenge with this is the detection is inaccurate. Large backlog alarms heavily require analyst validation. You actually require analysts to validate this, to validate that this is actually right, because it's not accurate. So what is expected is there should be accurate and precise classifications engine, which is very direct. This is actually bad. This is good. This is suspicious. This is benign. Just three phase: bad, suspicious, and benign. So of fail and successful, also the status. Has this guy actually compromised an environment? And just to allocate priority levels, severities. So the next, so in between detection and detection, automation, response, there is the machine learning algorithm that is needed. So these are the model that has been used over time. These are the model that has been used over time. But despite all these models, you still discover most of the challenges analysts have is this model. Every vendor tends to preach that they use machine learning and AI in their detection algorithm, but it has little or no impact in the production environment. This is actually a very big challenge. So and another thing is so what is recommended is, apart from the model, you should use a useful model, but there should be emphasis on the data, on the input stage also, which is the data. So the data that you actually use to train the model, it should be relevant, and that speaks to the quality of the data also. So the quality of the data together with useful model will actually go a long way. So the response, action, and recovery. So detection alone is not enough. Response is the end. So response and recovery is the end. So most of the time you discover that okay, of what benefit is detection alone to a PC or an endpoint that has actually been ransomed, or there's unavailability of service and you actually detected that. It's obvious already. So response action sometimes also actually stop at quarantine stage. So that is actually not smart enough. There should be a way to recover. Because malware remover, there are malware that actually clean their trace, that remove themselves actually after infecting the PC. So removing it or removing the process is not actually smart. So what is expected is recovery, full recovery. So expectation is there should be forensic capability and incident response capability. By this I mean you should be able to connect live to it remotely and execute some commands to get data. And also another thing that is similar is collection of, there should be a complete rollback and clean snapshot. So that still speaks to recovery. So the response action should be stealthy. This, in order stealthy in the sense that it should uniquely terminate malicious processes and sub processes. So if there is only one sub process that is malicious, uniquely terminate that without infecting others. Then others are offline protections, audit users. That speaks to non-repudiation, accountability, and authentications. Flexible role-based access. Most of the time, you discover the solution only have like two roles. One is the admin, which is not logical and ethical to give everybody the admin, and the second one is the low-level privileges. So in as much as we have to enforce least privilege principle, but there should be some rule, there should be some flexibility in between based on the need of the analyst, based on what the analyst intends to actually use the anti-malware product for. Also, very important, it's very important the ease with which you can spool reports, various type of report, the executive reports, the technical reports that deals with technical content. So it's very important the ease and the frequency and the content, the rich content of the report. So secondly, in the pillars of endpoint security, we have the people and process. So what is expected of the people? What is expected of the process? What process are expected? So one of the issues that one of the challenges over time is policies that are implemented like BYOD, bring your own devices. So how do you track BYOD? Like I bring my endpoint to the environment, and how do you track this to maintain sanity? And also procedure, there should be a procedure in place to handle third party. Uh, Delay management approval. Sometimes when you want to implement some policy or when you want to do some stuff, you have that there is possible of delay in management approval. And also during troubleshooting section, they require privilege, trust level. This speaks to trust level in between the engineers and finally the system has do most of the time do oversells or overshoot product capabilities. This is also a very big challenge. So lastly, on the blue team, it is expected of the blue team to maximize the capability of the endpoint solutions. So there's a case study, there's a scenario with the New York Times, whereby the New York Times have been breached. There are like up to like 45 malware samples that have been run by the APT, and the semantic product only detected one. So the semantic spokesperson reverted from the. You can check this on the URL that they did not actually, they only enable the antivirus detection. They didn't actually maximize the capability. And the fact, based on my survey, I discovered most of the time either analysts are not maximized, they have not actually explore the potentials, what the capability of the EDR, the features. So they're actually not actually maximizing it. So deploying these measures should be steady enough. You should use the maximum security as much as possible based on your use case. And also parameters. So analysts can often discover that okay, these are the configuration that actually take much of system resources, and they can schedule this to off-peak period or upgrade the PC, upgrade the hardware. Also cross-platform correlation. Instead of focusing on one solution enough, you should correlate events across various platforms. Training is very important. Training is very important. And lastly, EDR users often uninstall freedom to uninstall. Most of the time, they uninstall the agent for agent base for convenience. So out of scope, what is out of scope of this study? One thing that's out of scope of this study is the cost implication of most of these checkboxes. So most of them have cost implication, but it's not discussed. Review of agent and agentless, centralized and decentralized servers management is not discussed. Suitability or perfect machine learning model. I'm not recommending any vendors. So we are looking at a baseline to dictate or to actually choose vendor, but I'm not actually recommending any vendor precisely. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.